I created a perfectly good man. Pure, innocent, incapable of malice. Prince Myshkin walked into Petersburg society with nothing but love in his heart, with genuine compassion for every person he met, with complete inability to see evil in others. And I watched him, through 600 pages, get destroyed. Not by villains. Not by evil people. But by the simple fact that goodness, real goodness, cannot survive in a world built on lies and power and self-interest. And what broke me, what still breaks me when I think about it, is that his destruction wasn't tragic in the usual sense. He didn't lose a battle against evil. He simply couldn't exist. Like trying to keep a flame alive underwater. Like planting a flower in concrete. His goodness didn't fail. The world rejected it. And by the end he was back in the Swiss sanatorium, brain damaged, destroyed, proving what I had discovered in the cruelest possible way, that absolute goodness is incompatible with human society. Let me tell you why I wrote The Idiot. Not the official reason, not the literary explanation, but the real reason that was eating at me. I had come back from Siberia believing I understood suffering, believing I had been broken down and rebuilt into something closer to Christ. And I wanted to put that into a character. I wanted to create someone who embodied the Christian ideal: total forgiveness, complete love, inability to judge, perfect compassion. And I wanted to see if such a person could actually exist in the real world, could live among us, could survive our society without being destroyed or corrupted. The answer was no. And discovering that answer, writing it, living through Myshkin's destruction page by page, it nearly killed me. Because if perfect goodness cannot survive, if Christ-like love gets destroyed by contact with human reality, then what hope is there for any of us? Prince Myshkin returns to Russia after years in a Swiss sanatorium being treated for epilepsy. He's 26 years old but has the innocence of a child. Not stupidity, he's actually quite perceptive. But innocence. He sees people clearly, understands them deeply, but he cannot conceive of using that understanding to manipulate or harm. He meets Rogozin, a man consumed by dark passion, and instead of fear or judgment, Myshkin offers friendship. He meets Nastasia Filipovna, a woman destroyed by abuse and burning with rage and self-hatred, and instead of being repelled, he offers her pure, uncomplicated love. And society doesn't know what to do with him. They call him an idiot. Not because he's stupid, but because he doesn't play the games everyone else plays. He doesn't understand social hierarchy. He treats servants with the same respect as aristocrats. He tells the truth when lying would be advantageous. He forgives when everyone expects revenge. And this makes people profoundly uncomfortable. Because here's what I discovered writing him. Human society is built on mutual deception. On playing roles. On understanding that everyone is somewhat corrupt and operating accordingly. When someone genuinely good appears, someone who actually means what they say and says what they means, someone who actually loves without agenda, the entire social structure starts to collapse. Because if one person can be genuinely good, it exposes everyone else's compromises. It makes their cynicism look like cowardice. It reveals that they chose corruption when they could have chosen otherwise. So they destroy him. Not consciously, not maliciously, but inevitably. Because a society built on lies cannot tolerate someone who lives in truth. I watched this in Siberia. There was a man there, I'll call him Alexei, who maintained a kind of innocence despite everything. He had killed someone in a moment of passion, felt genuine remorse, and accepted his punishment without bitterness. And he treated everyone, guards, fellow prisoners, everyone, with basic human kindness. Not weakness. Not naivety. Just refusal to let the brutality of prison make him brutal. And the other prisoners destroyed him. Not through violence but through mockery. Through constant testing. Through pushing him to see when his kindness would break, when he would finally show the darkness they knew must be hiding underneath. Because they couldn't accept that someone could maintain genuine goodness in hell. It made their own surrender to bitterness and cruelty look like choice rather than necessity. It suggested that they didn't have to become what they had become. So they kept pushing until he broke. And when he finally did, when he finally responded with anger, they were almost relieved. Because now he was like them. Now the world made sense again. Myshkin falls in love with two women. Nastasia Filipovna, the damaged, beautiful woman who has been abused and corrupted and now wields her own corruption like a weapon. And Aglaya, the pure young woman from a respectable family who represents everything good and innocent that still exists in society. And his inability to choose between them, his genuine love for both, his refusal to see love as a competition where one must win and one must lose, this destroys all three of them. Because love in the real world isn't pure. It's possessive. It's jealous. It demands exclusivity. It requires you to choose, to reject, to wound. And Myshkin can't do this. His love is too complete. Too all-encompassing. Too much like the love we claim to admire in saints and prophets, but that becomes intolerable when you actually encounter it in a human being. Nastasia knows Myshkin loves her. Genuinely loves her. Not despite her corruption but through it, seeing the wounded innocent girl underneath all the rage and self-destruction. And this love, this pure uncomplicated acceptance, it terrifies her. Because if he can love her like this, then maybe she isn't as irredeemably ruined as she's convinced herself she is. Maybe she could be saved. Maybe she could change. And she can't handle that possibility. It's easier to be damned. Easier to lean into her corruption. Easier to go with Rogozin, the man who wants to possess her like an object, than to accept Myshkin's love that sees her as a person. Because Rogozin's dark passion asks nothing of her except that she be what she's already become. But Myshkin's pure love asks her to hope again. To try again. To believe she could be something other than what she's made herself into. And that's too painful. Too terrifying. Too much responsibility. So she runs to Rogozin. Over and over. And Myshkin watches, unable to stop loving her, unable to give up on her, unable to accept that sometimes people choose their own destruction. And this inability to give up on anyone, this refusal to write anyone off as beyond saving, it's simultaneously his greatest virtue and what destroys him. Do you see what I was showing here? Goodness in the abstract is beautiful. Everyone admires it. But goodness in practice, goodness that actually demands something of you, goodness that shows you your own failings by contrast, that becomes unbearable. That must be destroyed or driven away. I met this in myself after Siberia. I came back believing I had been transformed. That suffering had purified me. That I could live differently now. And for a while I tried. I tried to forgive everyone. To see the good in people. To respond to cruelty with compassion. And you know what happened? People hated it. My family was uncomfortable. My friends didn't know how to talk to me. Publishers took advantage of my inability to negotiate hard. Women saw my vulnerability as weakness. And slowly I had to learn to be harder. More suspicious. More willing to judge. More capable of cruelty when necessary. Not because I wanted to, but because genuine goodness made me a victim in a world that respects only power and cunning. And each compromise, each time I chose practical wisdom over innocent goodness, I felt like I was killing something in myself. But I also survived. And Myshkin, who never learned to compromise, who maintained his innocence to the end, he didn't survive. He ended up destroyed, brain-damaged, back in the sanatorium. The most devastating scene in the novel is when Myshkin has an epileptic seizure at a party. He's trying to explain something important, trying to share an insight about beauty and truth and how they could save the world, and in his passion and intensity he has a seizure. He falls, convulses, loses control of his body completely. And the aristocrats watching him are horrified. Not sympathetic. Horrified. Because he's shown them something raw and uncontrolled and human. He's violated the social contract that says we all pretend to be civilized and in control. And in that moment I was writing my own experience. My own epilepsy. The shame of losing control in public. The way people look at you after they've seen you helpless and twitching on the ground. The knowledge that they'll never see you the same way again. That you've been exposed as something less than human in their eyes. But Myshkin doesn't learn from this humiliation. Doesn't learn to hide his vulnerability. Doesn't develop the protective cynicism that would let him function in society. He remains open. Remains vulnerable. Remains incapable of protecting himself. And this refusal or inability to develop armor, it guarantees his destruction. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone genuinely good? Not someone who performs goodness. not someone who follows rules, but someone who actually embodies kindness and compassion and inability to harm? And if you have, did you feel inspired? Or did you feel uncomfortable? Did their goodness make you want to be better? Or did it make you want to prove they were secretly corrupt like everyone else? Because that's the test. That's what I was exploring through Myshkin. The way genuine goodness doesn't inspire us as much as it threatens us. The way it makes our compromises visible. The way it suggests that we didn't have to become what we've become. And that recognition, that uncomfortable awareness that we chose cynicism when we could have chosen innocence, it makes us want to destroy the person who's showing us what we could have been. The other characters in the novel are constantly trying to corrupt Myshkin. Not out of malice but almost out of kindness. They want to teach him how the world really works. They want to wise him up. They want to help him develop the defenses he'll need to survive. And he resists, not stubbornly but simply because he cannot be other than what he is. He's like a flower that people keep trying to teach to be a stone. It's not that the flower refuses. It's that a flower cannot become a stone without ceasing to be a flower. And eventually they stop trying to change him and start trying to use him. Because someone genuinely good, someone who cannot lie or manipulate or protect themselves, becomes a tool. Every character in the novel uses Myshkin's goodness for their own purposes. They confess to him because he won't judge. They manipulate him because he won't suspect. They hurt him because he won't retaliate. And he allows all of it. Not because he's passive, but because refusing to allow it would require him to stop being good. This is the impossible paradox at the heart of goodness. To protect yourself from being used requires you to suspect people. To suspect people requires you to believe they might be acting in bad faith. To believe in bad faith requires you to lose your innocence. And once you've lost your innocence, you're no longer purely good. You've become like everyone else, calculating, defensive, capable of cruelty in the name of self-preservation. Myshkin cannot make this compromise. And so he's destroyed. Used up. Driven to a final catastrophic breakdown by the sheer impossibility of being good in a world built on using each other. The ending of The Idiot is the bleakest thing I ever wrote. Rogozin murders Nastasia Filipovna. Kills the woman they both loved because if he couldn't possess her, no one would. And Myshkin finds Rogozin sitting by her corpse, and instead of horror or anger or calling for justice, Myshkin's first instinct is compassion for Rogozin. He sits with him, comforts him, treats the murderer with the same gentle understanding he showed everyone, because that's who he is. That's all he knows how to be. And this final act of compassion, this inability to respond appropriately to evil even when it's murdered someone he loved, it breaks him completely. His mind cannot process a world where such evil exists and must be faced. His goodness is so complete that encountering absolute evil doesn't make him fight back. It makes him collapse. And he ends up catatonic, destroyed, sent back to Switzerland with his mind gone. I wept writing that ending. Because I was admitting something I didn't want to admit. That Christ couldn't survive in our world. That perfect goodness is incompatible with human reality. That the choice isn't between being good and being evil but between being good and surviving. And most of us, myself included, choose survival. In Siberia, I watched men maintain various levels of goodness and humanity. Some became brutal and survived. Some maintained goodness and were destroyed. And the ones who survived with some goodness intact? They learned to hide it. To protect it by covering it with a shell of hardness. To be good secretly, in small ways, while presenting a tough exterior to the world. And I realized that's what society demands. Not that you be evil, but that you hide your goodness. That you perform cynicism even if you feel compassion. That you pretend to be hard even if you're soft inside. Because visible goodness, proclaimed innocence, open vulnerability, these things mark you as prey. As victim. As someone who can be used. Myshkin never learned this. Never learned to hide. And so he became everyone's victim. Even the people who loved him ended up hurting him because he made it so easy. Because he wouldn't defend himself. Because his goodness was so complete it left no room for self-preservation. Now here's the question I wrestled with then and still wrestle with now. Was I wrong to create him? To show that goodness cannot survive? Does putting that truth into the world make it more true? Does writing about the inevitable destruction of innocence contribute to that destruction? Or was I right to show it? To warn people that if you choose to be truly good, the world will destroy you? To make visible the cost of innocence in a corrupt society? I don't know. I've never known. But I wrote it because I had to. Because after Siberia, after trying to be better and watching it fail, I needed to understand why goodness doesn't work. Why the people we claim to admire most, the saints, the truly innocent, the purely good, either get destroyed or retreat from the world. Why they can't actually function in society. And what I discovered through Myshkin is that society isn't neutral. It's actively hostile to genuine goodness. Not because people are evil, but because the social structure itself requires mutual deception. Requires everyone to play the game. Requires that we all agree to certain corruption so we can function together. And someone who won't play the game, who insists on being genuinely good, threatens the entire structure. So what do you do with this knowledge? If you know that being truly good will get you destroyed, do you choose goodness anyway? Do you become like Myshkin, accept that destruction is inevitable, and live according to your values regardless of cost? Or do you compromise? Do you learn to hide your goodness? To be kind in private but cynical in public? To maintain some core of innocence while developing the armor necessary to survive? Most people choose the second path. I chose it. After creating Myshkin, after watching him be destroyed, I didn't become more innocent. I became more guarded, more willing to fight, more capable of cruelty when necessary. Because I saw what happens to the genuinely good, and I didn't want that to happen to me. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I made the wrong choice. If maybe Myshkin's destruction was more meaningful than my survival. If maybe it's better to be good and destroyed than to be compromised and intact. If maybe the willingness to be used and hurt and broken is itself the highest form of goodness. I don't have an answer. The Idiot doesn't have an answer. It's not a book with a moral or a lesson. It's a book that asks an impossible question. Is goodness possible in this world? And the answer it gives is no. Pure goodness cannot survive. It will be used and mocked and destroyed. And knowing this, what do you choose? You're facing this choice right now whether you realize it or not. Every time you choose kindness over self-protection, you're risking being Myshkin. Every time you choose honesty over advantage, you're making yourself vulnerable. Every time you choose to see the good in people when everyone else sees only their utility, you're stepping toward his kind of innocence. And the world will punish you for it. Not dramatically. Not through one big destruction. But through 1,000 small uses. Through people taking advantage of your kindness. Through your honesty being weaponized against you. Through your good faith being met with bad faith until you learn to stop offering it. And eventually you'll have to choose. To become harder. To develop armor. To learn to protect yourself by suspecting others. Or to maintain your goodness and accept that it will cost you everything. Most people choose hardness. Choose survival. Choose to become like everyone else. Partly good, partly corrupt, calculating enough to protect themselves. And they live. They function. They survive in society in a way Myshkin never could. But they also lose something. That spark of genuine goodness. That ability to love without agenda. That innocence that sees the best in people even when the worst is obvious. They lose it gradually, through necessary compromises, through hard-learned lessons, through the slow accumulation of betrayals that teach you to stop trusting. And by the end they're safe. Protected. Functional. But they're not good anymore. Not in the way Myshkin was good. Not in the way they once hoped to be. I'm not telling you which choice to make. I can't. I made my choice and I survived and I wrote great books and I also lost something I'll never get back. The possibility of being purely good. The hope that innocence could survive contact with reality. But I want you to know the cost of both choices. If you choose goodness, choose innocence, choose to be like Myshkin, you will be destroyed. The world will use you and mock you and break you. And in the end, you might end up like him, broken and brain damaged and unable to function. But if you choose hardness, choose protection, choose to develop the cynicism necessary to survive, you'll become like the rest of us. Functional but compromised. Safe but no longer innocent. Alive but having lost the very thing that made you want to be good in the first place. There's no third option. I looked for one. Through 600 pages of The Idiot, I tried to find a way for goodness to survive, for innocence to be protected, for Myshkin to somehow function in society without being destroyed or corrupted. And I failed. Because such a way doesn't exist. The world is not built to accommodate genuine goodness. And that knowledge, that terrible truth I discovered through writing Myshkin, it's both liberating and devastating. Liberating because it explains why you feel the way you do when you try to be good. Devastating because it means the choice between goodness and survival is real. And whichever you choose, you lose something essential. So here's what I learned, what Myshkin taught me through his destruction. Goodness is beautiful. Innocence is precious. But both are fragile beyond measure. And if you choose to embody them fully, the world will break you. Not because the world is evil, but because the world is built for survival, and pure goodness is incompatible with survival. And knowing this, you must choose. Not once, but every day. Every interaction. Every moment when someone's malice meets your kindness, when someone's cynicism meets your trust, when someone's cruelty meets your compassion. You must choose whether to be Myshkin, genuinely good and inevitably destroyed, or whether to be like the rest of us, learning to hide whatever goodness remains behind the armor necessary to survive. I can't tell you which choice is right. But I can tell you this. Myshkin destroyed and innocent was more truly human than any of the functional cynics who survived him. His destruction was more meaningful than their survival. And sometimes, late at night, I think maybe that's the answer. That maybe being good and destroyed is better than being compromised and intact. That maybe the willingness to be broken by the world's cruelty is itself the highest form of strength. But I don't know. And neither will you until you make your choice. Just know that the choice matters. That goodness matters even when it fails. That innocence matters even when it gets destroyed. And that sometimes the greatest act of courage is choosing to remain good in a world that will punish you for it.